Okay, so it's a windy day in Florida. When we were pulling all of this apart, the rain was coming through, and now the rain has pretty much passed through, and so we have the wind on the back side of the front. So I'll try to talk in more of a booming voice so that you can hear me. But we have finished our windshield, as you saw fractions of a second ago, which was actually day before yesterday for us. But we did the actual piece of plexiglass in the garage. You can do it on the deck of the boat, you can do it on the dock. We just had a garage available, so we did it there. And now we are cleaning off the old caulking here. And so Vadi's going to swing around in a second, but the wind's going to make it so you can't hear me. So I'm just going to explain it now. You scrape it with just a regular scraper. We like to round the edges so that you don't damage anything in case you come a little bit off a straight. Doesn't have to be beautiful, new, or anything, just in decent shape. We scrape off the caulk that we have, and then we're going to come back behind that and sand it with 120. It has to be clean to a molecular level. So if there's the tiniest little bit of the old silicone left, nothing will stick to it. So we scrape off the big chunks, sand it down to absolutely perfectly clean, and then I'll show you the next step as we get ready to install. So see you in a few seconds. Okay, so we've got 90% of the scraping done, and our boat owner is over here with the sandpaper. He has started sanding, and you can see where it has been cleaned up. There can be absolutely no residue of any kind. So we're power sanding first, and we're just going to hit it with the power sander to knock it down, and then we'll go back and hand sand each area to make sure we have absolute perfection. So I'm just getting the last of the big chunks and scraping that off. Boat owner is around the corner, and he has started sanding. And that's the next step. Alright, so we have done all of our scraping, we have done our rough sand, and now we've come back to hand sand, and we're just lightly hand sanding and inspecting as we go along for absolute perfection. This is one of those times where no matter what you think, we have to have perfection. So we're just going in, looking at everything, hand sanding to make sure it's perfect. There's little things, there's a discoloration where the plastic, the previous plastic ended. We're just going to lightly hand sand that because we can easily get to it now, so we might as well do it. No reason to leave a dirty trim mark when we don't have to. So at this point we're just going around hand sanding any little imperfections, doing little cosmetic cleanups, and getting ready for the next step. So I'll just be sitting here sanding. on this boat is that there is headliner, and the headliner wraps around and comes underneath. I normally don't recommend that, but that's how this boat is built, and so we're staying with it. So it adds an unusual step. If you have this, you may do a little bit of what we're about to do. Most of you won't have it, but we'll put it in just because it's here. The headliner, if it flops down while we're putting in our new port light, it can fold the wrong way, fold down, fold all kinds of things. So what we're going to do is spray a little bit of adhesive spray on the back of it. We have tape here to keep things from getting out of control. We'll let it tack up, pull the tape, flop this thing over, and then when we're installing and there's goop everywhere and we're trying to get things in place, we don't have to worry about also keeping this in place. So this is an unusual thing, but for those of you that have it, you'll get to see us spraying here and tacking this down, and we'll rumble forward. Alright, so we have done our spray adhesive, we have sanded, we have cleaned, and now we are dry fitting. So we're going to put the piece up in place, put in about 6 screws to make sure it's in exactly the right place, and check everything over, make sure everything is right, all the edges fit, everything is good. And then we're going to go inside, and I'll show you the next step on the inside, and rock and roll. But this is the part where we do the dry fit, so I won't be much in the mood to talk, so I'm just telling you what we're doing, and then we'll put this thing in place. Ready? So for us it's tomorrow, for you it's fractions of a second later, but we have everything in place. We did one little trim over here when we put it on the boat. It didn't line up, so we did a recut and a resand and just trimmed this edge a little bit. Everything is lining up now. There's a couple of screw holes that aren't quite perfect, but we're going to take care of that later. So now we checked our screw depth. Our new piece of plexi is a little thicker than the old one, so we had to change screw size, which created some interesting adventures, and there was no reason to bore you guys to death watching a video while we tried this screw and that screw and the other screw. But we have our screw size, we have everything set. We looked at using the finish washers in case you want to use them. That was a finish washer, that still is. So that's a finish washer. And it spreads the load, the screw fits into it. For people who like them, that's a finish washer. A lot of people use them, a lot of people don't. I mentioned it before, the owner of this boat doesn't like them, so we're not going to use them. But we brought them down so that he could take a look. So the last thing, I won't be talking much, but Videy will probably be shooting. We're going to tape our edges. Now that our piece is in place, we're going to tape our edges, get ready for caulk. We're going to tape our edge on the inside, and then we will pull. There's a piece of plastic that protects everything on both sides. So we'll pull that off on the inside, just on the edge. We'll sand that outer edge, and then get ready to install this thing. We're coming to the end, so that's it. We'll see you on the flip side. Alright, so we have, we have our guard dog going. We have scribed the inside, so while this was in place, I ran just a pocket knife around the edge where you'll be able to see it. It'll make sense when I pull this off. And so we've prepped everything, we've taped everything, we've verified everything, we've checked everything again. And though I'm sure that we'll find something we don't like, we've pretty much done everything we can do to make this as smooth as we can. So now, I'm pulling this back, and we are going to, so this is the part that's actually going to have caulk and be touching the boat. So we're going to sand this so that the caulk will stick to it. And then we're going to put a little bit of caulk here, quite a bit of caulk here, quite a bit of caulk here, mesh those two together, screw it in, and then be really proud of ourselves. So that's it. The next step, now that we've marked this line, pulled that piece off, we're just going to sand this, start putting caulk on it. Okay, so I was just mentioning to my friend here that you don't have to worry about sanding too much. It's impossible, but you can sand too little. Any place where there's any shiny left where it has not been sanded, it won't stick for very long, and that's where it'll break. So when in doubt, sand a little more. So now we're wiping everything down. Dust makes things not stick. So we have sanded away all the shiny. We're doing a quick re-sand of the fiberglass just to make sure no contaminants got on it overnight and no anything else. When in doubt, sand. And then we'll recheck our tape and start squirting some caulk. So we're almost there. Alright, so we have doubled up our tape edge just in case we drip. We have sanded, we have masked everything off, we have wiped everything down, we've verified everything for the 4th or 5th or 20th time, and now we're going for it. So I mentioned earlier we're using the Dow Corning caulk, and this is the stuff. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. I recommend nothing else. Just a couple quick things as we get into the caulking section. The caulk is a mystical thing. It has some magical power to jump to places that you never wanted it to be, to jump between different products, to jump onto your fingers, jump onto your clothes, and then stick there. So I highly recommend that you wear clothes that you don't like. Most people wear gloves, but I've been doing this so long I like to be able to feel it. But for safety reasons, it's recommended that you wear gloves. And then a little bit on what the caulk is doing, because as we lay caulk on, you have to understand what we're doing. So part of the job of the caulk is adhesion to hold our piece onto the boat. The other part of the purpose of the caulk is that as heat and cold hit the plexiglass or Lexan, we're using plexi, but you can use either one. As heat or cold hits the plexi or the Lexan, it expands and contracts. Nobody believes it, but it's actually true. Fiberglass will expand and contract as well, depending on how hot or how cool it is, but they expand at different rates. So there's going to be a motion between them. Well, one is expanding more and the other is expanding less. One is cooling more, one is cooling less. And so the caulk has to be able to take up that difference. So we're going to have about 1/8 of an inch of caulk. Different people recommend different amounts, but on a piece this big, I like to have about 1/8. If you went with 1/4, you'd be okay. But we're going to go with about 1/8 of an inch of caulk. And it doesn't have to be measured exactly 1/8 or exactly 1/4, but just numbers that you can work with. So 1/8 to 1/4 of caulk. We put caulk on both sides just to make sure that it's covered. One of the things we noticed when we pulled the old one off is that there were huge bubbles and voids. So by putting caulk on both sides, it minimizes that. It's impossible to completely get rid of it, especially when you're building up a thickness of caulk, but you want to minimize it as much as you can. And one of the best ways to do that is A, put it on both surfaces, B, bring something over the surface, a squeegee, a finger, whatever you want to use to make it as flat as you possibly can on both surfaces, so that when the two surfaces come together, there's a minimal amount of bubbles in there. And that's it. So now, the moment of the truth, as my beautiful Whitey says. We are laying some caulk on. And I'm going to cheat. We're going to come back in just a second because it takes a month to put caulk on with a small hole. We're going to make a bigger hole so that we can just squirt this stuff out, because it's not a fine line when you're doing a window or a door or a tub. You want a beautiful fine line across there. We don't want a fine line. We want to put some material on. So I'm going to find a knife, which is not on my hip at the moment, and we'll be right back. I didn't get to do a lot of talking because we had to move pretty quick, but we got it on, we got the screws in, and I snugged it just a little, just enough that some stuff oozed out, but we didn't go crazy. I ran my finger all the way around to create a moderately pretty cosmetic edge, and now we are pulling tape with this particular product. You pull tape right away. So we are pulling tape.